This is Beyond the Books. I'm your host, Muhammad Ali, and this is my co host, Zakaria. Today, we are delighted to have an amazing guest. His name is Sencer Berrak. He has over 9 years of experience in the digital healthcare and pharmaceutical industries. He is an expert in integrating real world data with digital technologies to improve healthcare delivery and access, particularly in the field HIV treatment and medical communications.
Sencha, how are you today?
Thank you very much. All good. And thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you talking to curious young minds like yourself.
Could you tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. My name is Sanjar, as you said, and I've been in the pharma industry for decades now. But recently, I'm originally from Turkey, but moved to London, UK back in 2018 for a position at my company, GlaxoSmithKline. As everybody knows, GlaxoSmithKline is one of the top 10 pharma companies in the world with bringing so many solutions to so many diseases that have been haunting humanity for thousands of years. Interestingly enough, we're the only company that works in the three current epidemics of the world: malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV. I was lucky enough to work on the HIV space for the past 3 years, especially. My current role is the Global Medical Digital Manager. What this role does is that we are developing the necessary tools which our medical teams use to convey the science of our products to the healthcare professionals who are prescribing these drugs. All of the HCPs want to know, what is the science behind it? What do the trials say? How is your efficacy? What is the safety profile of their drugs? And these are the conversations which our tools facilitate between our teams and the HCPs. So I hope that gives an idea.
That's a fantastic answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sancha, what inspired your journey into your field?
So that's a great question because I do have a big passion, especially in the area I'm working now, which is HIV, because our company has this ultimate vision of eradicating HIV for good. So we're not only trying to help people live a better lives, but we only want to completely wipe off HIV from the face of the earth. Humanity started agriculture 13,000 years ago, and after we started living in close proximity to animals, all kinds of diseases have been haunting us ever since then. During all this time, only one disease have been eradicated, and that's smallpox. It is a huge achievement which humanity managed to do back in 1979, thanks to vaccine campaigns. Now we have the chance to do it two more times. Polio is one that is extremely close to eradication, and now HIV is an area that I'm working in. So if you think about it, what can be more fulfilling, rewarding than being a part of the journey to eliminate disease, which still affects 1 million people annually? There are 40 million people living with HIV today. Each year we lose 600,000 of them, and 1 million new patients are added. So thanks to our products, most of these people are able to live completely normal lives and have normal relationships, and they cannot be distinguished from people that do not have the virus. So this is something that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Definitely. Could you explain to the viewers what HIV is for the people who don't know what the disease
Of
is?
course, HIV is a relatively recent disease. Back in 1981, 4 years ago, it was first found out in US, especially first in the gay community. It came up. It stands for human immunodeficiency virus, and this is a retrovirus. But that means is it's quite different than the viruses like coronavirus, which we are familiar with. Once it gets into your cells, it copies it into your DNA, so it becomes a part of you, and that's why it's at the moment impossible to cure HIV due to this nature of it. The best we can do is have a treatment, make the virus sleep in your cells so that it doesn't affect your life at all, as long as you take your medication daily. So what this has been achieved now, so that's human immunodeficiency virus is completely under control once the medications are taken and you adhere to the schedule. Once that is stopped, it immediately wakes up and impacts your life. The second phase of the disease is called AIDS, which everybody knows. That's the deadly part. Not all HIV, of course, converts to AIDS, but before, in 1993, we came up with the first drugs. Unfortunately, it was a death sentence, and almost everybody died because of this. And now only people who cannot afford the disease or who do not know they have the disease, unfortunately, we lose them. So that's a short story of HIV.
Perfect. So, if a person does have HIV, they have to be on lifetime medication basically. And we're trying
That's right.
to remove the need for lifetime medication. Is that true?
Not really, no. At the moment, that's not where we're at. So what our company does is there are two different treatments. One of them is pill-based, and you take one pill a day. So that's for life. You have to do it, and you cannot even give a couple of days break. The other recent innovation we came out with is having an injection once every 2 months. So instead of 365 days of medication, you do it 6 times a year. Much more convenient for the patient, and they also are happy with it because they do not have to disclose their status. They just go to a clinic, have their shots, forget it for 2 months, and then repeat. Right now, both of these are lifetime treatments. You do have to obey and be very careful with it. Our company is working, for instance, to make this rather than every 2 months, every 3 or 4 months. So make it less and less a part of their lives. But like I said, this is still a huge improvement that we first came out with to make our patients' lives more manageable and easier to handle. Yeah.
Definitely. How do you go about increasing that time from 2 months? How do you make it longer? Because I pill is also going into the body, and the injection is
Uh,
also
So it's called long-acting injectables. So once of course, we have all of these R&D scientists who are constantly working on this. Once it gets into your body, it's a slow-release medicine. So by controlling how slowly it is released, you're able to play on that duration and make it, instead of last 60 days, maybe make it last 90 or 120 days even. This is a very, very, very hard and costly process. It requires so many clinical trials. Just to give you an idea, right now, some of the solutions we're working on, it's hoped that it will be on the market and live in the next 8 to 10 years. So you're always, when you're working in pharma, new products, you're talking mostly decades, like that's that long. So this is why pharma industry have to do clinical trials, phase 1, where you test the drug in just a limited number of people. If it works, it goes to phase 2 with just a bit more, and then a phase 3 where you test it with, like, let's say 5 to 10,000 people. Only after that it goes to EMA in Europe and FDA in US. They approve the drug, it's on the market. This costs anywhere from 500 million to $1 billion even. And at any stage of it, sometimes it fails. When you're towards the end, you unplug it, and all that is a loss. So this is why coming up with new drugs is such a laborsome, hard process, and why they cost so much as well.
definitely.
So, what was the key moment or the catalyst which made you choose this path?
Well, I have a technical background. I'm a computer engineer, but after making it for years and years, I wanted to do a change in my career as well. So with this role, I'm able to use my technical skills because of all the tools we develop, but also I learned the medical science of it, which is a huge passion and a hobby of mine. I like to read about science, and I had to learn from scratch all the details which I'm talking to you about, how the drugs work, what are different classes, what does an integrase inhibitor do. So right now, for me, it's the best of both worlds, technical skills and science used together in one career. Hence, that's why it applies to me so much.
Perfect. Let me ask you this, because you look like you're very passionate about what you work in, and that's fantastic because a lot of people don't get that opportunity. What project are you like currently working on that really excites you?
Very good questions, by the way. I really like it. So there's so much. But for example, one thing that comes to mind is we developed a tool recently which shares our real world evidence data. What does that mean? Before a drug comes into market, I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that we test it in clinical trials. But think of it like this. We are 8 billion people, and in clinical trial, you test this maybe with 5 to 6,000, at most 10,000 of them. It's such a small sample. You may have left out some ethnicities, some hard to reach markets. So when the market comes on drug, you do not know the impact and how it works with these huge group of people cohorts. After the drug is on the market, we continue these studies. They are called real world studies. And as the name implies, you go and try to find these elder patients, or let's say like African patients, pediatrics, or all these studies are conducted. There is a great wealth of data, hundreds and hundreds of studies. So I developed a tool which displays all of these studies in nice looking infographics and charts. An interested HCP comes to the tool, just takes a look at the data and says, okay, I see that this product works brilliantly in pregnant women, so I'm much more convinced and I can now start prescribing it. So that's one of the tools which we currently work on and I'm quite proud of and excited about.
See.
That seems fantastic. Yeah.
And what personal challenges or challenges that you faced developing that project or in life in general?
It's always a challenge because my role is global. So that means we are looking after almost 42 countries, and this spans all the way from like Chile all the way to China and Russia. So every one of these countries have different requirements, roles, compliance, and regulations. Having one global tool that serves all of these people comes with tremendous challenges. You have to reconcile between one market and another, and yet still try to keep it one tool, because you don't want 40 different tools used in 40 countries, which becomes a mess. So normally the hurdles that I try to jump over, especially in the pharma industry, is how do you use the best new technology and yet make it compliant, legal, and obey to the rules? These are conflicting requirements. That's always a challenge.
Now, let me just ask you this, because I know the medical field and, of course, tech in the medical field is a very fast-paced space. Everything's changing around the world with developing it. How do you keep up with the knowledge and update yourself on what's happening around the world?
It's super important point because I mean, I've come out of school so many years ago now, but the only reason I can keep up with it, like just as an example, like Gen AI is a little over 2 years technology, and ever since it came up, everything has changed. So right now, I try to spend a certain portion of my week for sure to follow up some important newsletters. I'm subscribed to some magazines which I try and read, and do hands-on trainings and tests with new tools just to see how I can merge our needs with the tools, because that's where innovation comes from. You have to know what's in the landscape so that when a problem arises, you can tie the two together. Just remember, like, innovation is nothing but learning about what's there and then combining it to the current problems. So you're spot on. Unless you do follow these and spend 15 to 20% of your week just knowing what's out there, you immediately you fall behind, and you can no longer do a good job.
Definitely.
So with that, like, especially with balancing your work, home life, and learning all of this new stuff, because originally you started with computer science and learning all of that, you possessed that knowledge beforehand, but you had to learn about HIV and all of the medical stuff. So how did you manage your time with so many responsibilities?
It comes with experience. Like at the moment, I've been almost it's coming up to 30 years that I'm and have a professional career. So it's not something that is quite easy when you first start on your journey, because you may feel overwhelmed. Do I do this task? Do I train myself? Do I spend time with my family or go out with my friends? But I think it comes with the experience that even right now, I think my work-life balance is quite well, because it doesn't spill over into weekends or quite late nights. During the daytime, I have this rule that I'm focused. I try and deal everything during the work hours. If you have a good planning tools, and you know in the morning when you first come in, okay, today this is the vital tasks. If I have time, I will do these, and I have like 10% personal time. Just try and stick to that plan, and then like a domino effect, the rest comes easy.
I want to ask you something. If you could expand on Gen AI a little bit, because I'm quite interested in what that does. And after that, I'll follow up with a different question. But
So Gen AI, like we said, November 2022 with OpenAI's GPT 3.0, it was like a bombshell, because if you think about the past tech milestones, 2001 iPod came out, 2007 iPhone came out, 2010 iPad came out, and all these changed the world in substantial ways. And probably the OpenAI's release in November 2022, it was equally, if not more, impactful. Right now, just let's go back to the basics. AI is the overarching category. Gen AI is a subcategory of this. The old AI, which all of us were using, it was look at the data, detect the patterns, and then predict the future. That's the predictive AI. That's still there. It's still being used in a lot of places. Gen AI has given the capability to train on a tremendous amounts of data, the trillions of data, basically everything on the internet. By the way, they're running out of like useful data now. They trained with so much stuff that right now it's getting harder and harder to make them smarter, because there is no more data to train. So that's a very interesting point. And if it starts training it on its own garbage, then there is a possibility it may even degrade. So this is a mind-blowing fact. Gen AI is now creating new content, and there is a very interesting balance there, because if you want it to be creative, you should let it sometimes hallucinate facts. So this is not a bug of it, it's a feature, because if you don't want it to hallucinate, it can never come up with an original answer, but people want it to be original. So these two come together, and this new creation of content was a big milestone because it can be used in so many places. Just to give some ideas, if you have an important upcoming interview, just letting it role play and letting you ask questions is such an incredible preparatory tool that nobody would have believed it was a sci-fi thing in 2021. And now I use it all the time. I mostly use it to criticize this and what have I missed and how can I make it better. And it's such an incredible tool. So I think it's very tied into how you want to use it. So think of it like an assistant and use it that way. I want to do this. Can you help me? So it's a two-way communication rather than using it like a search engine and saying like, tell me about this and stopping there. That's, I think, where the real value of it lies. And we're using it in a lot of places. But most important thing in the pharma industry, everybody has to be extremely diligent and cognizant that what comes out may have errors. So we call it human in the loop. You ask something, you bring it, humans evaluate the output and then use it. So that's still where we're at.
No, completely. I've personally written a book on artificial intelligence, and I completely agree with you on the fact that we don't have enough data. We use big data to train the models, but now there's this specific linear line where we can't make the models better. And I was discussing this with another person, and we were like, if it starts this like this paradox, it creates images, it creates audios, it creates stuff, but then you use it to train newer models. And like you said, it might make them worse. So
Yeah.
it's like we would have to change, I'm not sure, the neural networks or something of sort to give it more freedom to actually express itself or actually kind of make its new stuff. Or else it's just going to be, it's a ticking time bomb on that way if we just rely on data.
Absolutely. But what I'm relieved about is that there's probably 10,000 incredible minds working on this exact problem. So we'll see how they're going to come about. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And even the assistant bit, like I personally use ChatGPT as like a voice assistant. I just talk to it about what I'm working on and the feedback it gives. Like me and my friends were discussing, if you ask a teacher a question, they might be like, that's a silly question. ChatGPT always starts with, that's a great question. It's just already gonna
Yeah.
tackle that
Yeah.
question. But no, absolutely. AI is a big part of this. And then let me follow up with this question. What are the biggest shifts you've seen in the 5 years in your industry? Like AI is of course a big one. Now I know in medicine and especially in cancer research, AI is used to scan. Well, it's being developed, but AI scans a lot of images and can identify cancer in early stages, and that's quite helpful. Would that something that you've seen in the past 5 years, or?
Well, of course, the diagnostic AI is a big deal and it helps so many, especially in oncology. I think it saves a lot of time and even may be as good as a radiologist in detecting some. So that's an exciting field. But there is also a lot of pharmaceutical technologies that are coming up. So if you think about mRNA that came up in 2020, there's like so much work there going on how to use it better now. So that's one huge new technology. Again, that's just gone live with COVID, but now hundreds, maybe thousands of people are working on to make a cancer vaccine using mRNA technology, and it's a promising one. Just yesterday, I read another paper about what's called inverse vaccines. So for immunocompromised diseases like MS or rheumatoid arthritis, as you know, your own immune system attacks you. So basically, there's nothing wrong with you, but your immune system thinks it does, and it just eats you from inside. That's like impacting millions of people worldwide. Such a hard thing to do. Right now, they're about to come up with a new technology called inverse vaccines. So what that does is, if you get a regular vaccine, it boosts your immune system, so it fights the diseases better. Inverse vaccines is it controlled manner, it calms down your immune system so it doesn't attack you anymore, and you live a much better life. So if in the next 5 to 10 years this comes on in market, hundreds of millions of people will be impacted by it. So that blew my mind when I read about it. So pharma also comes out with its own highly advanced technologies this way too.
It's very
So,
interesting.
if to contrast with Ali's question, I want to ask you now, what will not change in the next 5 years or in future as a general?
Because if
uh,
something does not change in the next 5 years or the past decade, that's gonna stay as a standard, and that's basically where most of the economic money type you can make is.
what will not change? So that's a good one. I like this question. So the first thing that pops into my mind is the antibiotic resistance, right? So like I think it's going to continue on the path because of the abuse of antibiotics and the fact that so many bacteria are gaining resistance to it, and human nature still keeps on using it. on animals and ourselves, that's going to be a problem. Probably it may worsen even, and how we will address that is a hard one. And the current diseases like malaria and tuberculosis and even HIV, they're going to be around probably in the next 20 years at least. So we'll continue fighting them. So I'm hoping at least we can like maybe wipe out some more diseases. Do you know that polio is only like in small portions of Afghanistan and Pakistan only, and there is no other polio cases anywhere? So I'm hopeful that maybe polio will be completely gone. But in terms of what's going to stay the same, I think pharma companies trying to come up with new molecules and then making trials and using it that way, that's here to stay. But it's interesting because there's so much, like as you know, US is now talking about prices and the pricing strategy, equal distribution, developed versus developing countries, and access to the drugs. Those are very hard problems, and I think we'll still be talking about them in the next 10 years.
Definitely. And the thing with antibiotic resistance is, I believe we're gonna eventually we're on a decline where of course resistance is increasing, antibiotics are becoming less useful as time goes on, and we have to find new ways of getting anti-resistance. But the thing is, it's so expensive to research it. And I think if AI can help research
Oh
and
yeah,
find
good
antibiotics,
point.
that will be a huge way. If you can figure out how AI can find new mold or some type stuff in the ocean or something that can provide antibiotic resistance, that's big stuff right there.
That's a great point. And in fact, that's a very hot topic as well. If you think about it, the combinations of molecules that a human can look is greater than the number of stars in the universe. So that takes ages, decades. So right now, one thing that they're focused on is instead of looking at 1 trillion combinations, AI says, here is 1,000 that I believe you should focus on. And that's already cuts down 90% the work they have to do. There was one antibiotic that came out this way called Halidon, and the name comes from the Space Odyssey, the computer hell. So it was a little joke by scientists. And right now they're evaluating it. So if it works, it'll be the first real case of an AI entirely coming up with an antibiotics. So that space is exciting too. We are also using it in a lot of spaces. Not immediately AI saying, here, I found you a drug, but giving you viable candidates to cut down on the research time.
Definitely. I think at the end, humans have to do a little bit of intervention, especially when it comes to medical fields,
Oh,
because
of course.
you need that final touch of guarantee. Because if an AI makes a mistake and you just go with it, who's reliable? You can't say OpenAI is reliable because the
Oh,
ChatGPT is
yeah.
wrong, because they're right underneath that. We are not liable. ChatGPT can make mistakes, or is the company liable? So at the end, there's always has to be a state of human, like looking back through all the AI's work.
Did you hear there are now AI insurances? This came up very recently,
Is
but
there
insurance
AI
companies
insurance?
are selling to companies what's called an AI insurance. So if AI makes a mistake and you're liable to pay, you can claim it on the insurance. And I think this is going to be a hot topic too. I just recently learned that about that too. So this ties into what you said. Even if they claim everybody will check it, there are these little instances that slip through the cracks. So they had to have an insurance policy for that now.
And
Don't you
that's
think?
very interesting.
Don't you think there'll be ethical problems for AI insurance?
uh, Ethical problems are always there because it depends on what you train it with. So in our world, as you know, unfortunately there are still racial biases. So if AI has millions of rows that are trained on white Caucasian people only, and then it does a terrible job with any other races, then that's the training data, but that bias is inherent. So how do you solve it? So this is AI ethics is going to be, I think, one of the most exciting career prospects because more and more people are learning at it. So AI ethics, I think it will try and solve these problems, but it will be a hard one.
Definitely. In computer science, we discuss this a lot of the times, and we're like, okay, if there's an AI model that's made for CCTV and it scans people's faces, determining what kind of activities they're doing, and gives them a scale on how likely they are to do a crime or some sort. And what we realized was because it was trained on so much data, but the majority of the data was a little biased, a little
Of
racist.
course.
And what happened was it started rating African Americans and other people a little bit more. And that's just a clear flaw. So there's so many ethical debates you can have around AI, and it's just gonna get more interesting.
Absolutely.
So let's like move away from the AI and the other topics now, and let's ask more about you. What is a fun fact that people wouldn't guess about you?
Fun fact. Well, so a couple of years ago, I published a short story book in Turkey, and for a while it was quite popular. And I even met my first wife, who was a fan, and wrote me a letter, wrote me a fan letter. So then we met and dated, and then married. So I'm quite proud of that book. It was like 80 mini short stories that are quite absurd and surreal. So I'm a published author. Maybe that can that be considered a fun fact?
Definitely.
Definitely a fun
That's a
fact.
very fun fact. And the fact that you met your wife through that is absolutely fantastic.
It's
Because it's
a
like
love story.
if you never took that step, think I guarantee you probably tell this to your kids.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm sure there are others, but right now that's the first one that popped up.
Perfect. Let me ask you this. What's your favorite book?
I'm a bookworm, so I do read a lot. So I just thinking about some. I read a lot of nonfiction these recent days,
Yeah.
but of course I used to read a lot of fiction back in the day. But some of my most favorite authors is. So, for example, I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So, Love in the Time of Cholera is one of my favorite books, as well as Boris Vian, which I did mention to Zach previously. He's one of my favorite authors. And L'Acume des Jours is in France, but Zach, what was it in English? You know, it's his
Froth
book.
on the Daydream.
Froth on the Daydream is one of the most amazing love stories I've read. So I just want to mention, and Catch 22, by the way, I read that multiple times. Catch 22 is one of my favorite books. Joseph Heller, I think it's such a big classic. Every 10 years I reread it. 1984, George Orwell, of course, I adore them. I like dystopia books. Yeah, so these are some of my fictional favorite books. In nonfiction, there's an author called Sam Keen. If you haven't tried it out, I incredibly recommend him. He has a podcast called Disappearing Spoon, which every week in just 20 minutes, he finds a very obscure scientific fact that has an amazing story and talks about them. And he has, I think, 6 or 7 incredible books. So for anybody listening, if you want to try it and you like science history, Sam Keen is a very, very strongly recommended.
We'll definitely look into.
What hobby would you pursue other than books if time wasn't a constraint?
I'm a fitness nut as well, so I work out almost every day, and I do like to push myself. So high intensity interval training, some vinyasa yoga, some Pilates. So I try and mix it up equally between strength, cardio, and flexibility, because that's the definition of fitness. But I'm very much into fitness. I like to take long walks, listening to podcasts as well, but in the parks near my home. Yeah, so those two are my number 2 and number 3 hobbies.
That is quite fantastic. If I come back to, I know you've been mentoring Zach, and could you explain what that consists of? What's the end goal with Zach here?
So it's the first time I formally did mentoring as well, but it's an incredible pleasure for me too, because after gathering all these experience during the years, what's the best thing to do is just to hand it over to the next generation, because it's a way of being immortal. If you think about it, your experiences living on, since like we are all transient, but your experiences can live on. And for with Zach, it was a huge pleasure, because we are talking about, we have started by just identifying 4 focus areas which we can focus on, like time management, public speaking. And every week we just go over some solid tools, how these can be improved. I give some suggestions from my experiences. And the best part is Zach does implement these, and in our next session says, I did this, it turned out great, I improved in this area. So it's a positive feedback loop this way for me too. So I think, yeah, I'm going to continue. It was very, very pleasurable and rewarding for me as well. I hope it works for you too, Zach.
It was fantastic.
Sencer, did you ever have a mentor type figure in your life? Because I'm mentorship, I believe, is the best way you could learn. You
Oh,
find a
absolutely.
person who's already a professional or who's where you want to be, and you learn from them. It's one of the best ways to get ahead and fast as well.
Not a formal program like what we are doing with Spark now, but I had informal mentors at every workplace I had. And when I just saw someone who has all this experience, and I tried to grab and get their experience by asking the right questions and being around them. So it's very important. And like you said, coming out of school is probably 20% of what you need to learn. The other 80 is during the workplace and what you get out of it. So if you're demanding, and you find some suitable candidate around, and you just request them. By the way, in our company, we have a formal mentoring program. You just have to find the right person, ask, and almost everybody says yes. So you have these sessions as well. But you're spot on, and I agree with you. The mentoring is amazing, and I can remember a couple I had in my past where I learned immense amounts from.
Fantastic.
Questions?
I just want to expand a little bit. I'm quite curious about the vaccines and stuff. I just want to come back to that a little bit. And so, how much do you think? So, currently, you're working on HIV treatments, right? And how we can improve the time span and stuff. What's the end goal?
In our area, at the moment, even though we are looking for, so let's focus on HIV first, and then we'll broaden it. In HIV, the number one focus is what's called PrEP. It's called pre-exposure prophylaxis. So by giving a drug to people who are in risk of getting infections, you can think of the pool of new infections shrinking every year from 600 to 400 to 200, so that in the next, let's say, 15, 20 years, no new infections happen thanks to this prophylaxis drug. So that's one area of focus, and we do believe this will happen. Another area is some scientists are also working on a prospective cure for HIV. If this is ever achieved, of course, that's how it's going to be wiped out too. So that's why the cure and pre-exposure prophylaxis together is our focus. And if you ask me, this is my personal view, we're probably talking about 20 to 30 years before HIV becomes a past deal in humanity, such as smallpox. In other diseases, these timelines are all different, of course. It's not as hard to find a cure. For instance, our company GSK came up with a malaria vaccine for the first time a couple of years ago. It wasn't possible before. So malaria is also being under control a little bit. But like I mentioned, at the moment, there are only three epidemics in the world: tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV. And each of these, you can be relaxed that there's incredible minds working on them. So maybe, if not in my lifetime, definitely before the 22nd century comes in, some of these will hopefully have been wiped out.
I've got another question. What has been GSK's biggest or most recent triumph? For example, like a disease has been fully eradicated, or like
Biggest
great lives
recent
have been
triumphs.
saved.
I mean, the GlaxoSmithKline is 100,000 people and a big giant. So our company Vive is a subsidiary of it, and we are quite small compared to them, only 1,100 people worldwide. So of course, in HIV space, I'm super proud, like I said, with these long-acting injectables that makes patients' lives easier. But on the GSK side, they come up with new oncology drugs that add years into the lives of cancer patients. So they're doing great there. The malaria vaccine was something which we were super proud of. And during the COVID vaccine crisis, even though we didn't come up with our own vaccine, we gave what's called an adjuvant. You add to a vaccine and it increases its efficacy by 2 to 3 times. They just lent out their adjuvants to multiple companies so that each of them worked better. So we played our part during COVID that way too. So these three come to mind when you ask about it.
Perfect. Sencha, it was wonderful talking to you.
It was a
You
pleasure.
seem you seem
Likewise.
you seem like such an amazing person. The creativity, the amount of knowledge you have, and the broad range. Like, you love learning, you love knowing more, and I think that is one of the best things a person can do. So we really appreciate you coming here.
I just want to mention that, by the way, I didn't know what to expect when I come in, but the quality of your preparations and the questions really amazed me. And I think you seem to be really, really young, curious minds. It was a big pleasure. I really enjoyed it too. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure's all ours,
Always a
Sencha. I
pleasure.
really appreciate it. And again, we will definitely have you again. We can.
All right.
I
Of
want to have
course.
longer talks with you. It's just
Brilliant.
hopefully in the future we'll definitely get you back again.
Deal.
It was a
Agreed.
pleasure having you. And guys, we hope you learned something new, and I guarantee you learned something new. And hope you left this episode with a better understanding of how GSK and Sencha here is helping our lives become better. This was Beyond the Books, and remember, these are stories between the lines.